A relic of a bygone era, I guess, no longer the social norm on the progression of relationships. But in previous generations, from a young age, we received direct and not so direct messages that taught us about the evolutionary order of boy-girl relationships that first lead to pair bonding, then marriage, then with the anticipation of children. But from the schoolyards of yesteryear, the song went something like this. A group of boys or a group of girls would taunt their friend with the popular name of a boy or a girl in their school. So it went something like this. Stan and Stacy sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby in a baby carriage. While simple and very clear, things have changed over the decades, as have attitudes. And nowhere more so than in with the circles of militant third-wave feminism. And this is probably no better exemplified than by the quote, slut walks, closed quote, which is a transnational protest movement that began in Toronto when an outraged feminist felt the weight of institutional patriarchy crashing into her special snowflake reality when a Toronto police officer suggested that women would avoid dressing like sluts, or women should avoid dressing like sluts, as a precaution against sexual assault. And what was the response to this advice? Well, basically that for women to show their power, their independence, and her pride, well, they must be associated with her right to not only be an S-word, but act and dress like one too. And I'm sure that this will work out just great for society in the long run.
The girl gets mad and says, oh, wait a minute. Just because I'm dressed this way does not make me a whore. Which is true. Gentlemen, that is true. Just because they dress a certain way doesn't mean they are a certain way. Don't ever forget it. But ladies, you must understand that that is fucking confusing. Just is. Now that would be like me, Dave Chappelle the comedian, walking around the streets in a cop uniform. Somebody might run up on me. Oh, thank God. Officer, help us. Come on, they're over here. Help us. I'm like, oh, just because I'm dressed this way does not make me a police officer. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, all right, lady, fine. You are not a whore. But you are wearing a whore's uniform, I'll tell you that shit right
now. Now, just a little information on definitions, and for the purposes of this video, because of the never-ending and ever-increasing censorship on some channels on YouTube, I will be substituting the word slag or S-word to substitute for the word that we are trying to talk about, the word that I've already used about walking. When looking at the current cultural expressions as they are championed by blue check marks and the legacy media, well, they are very much indicators that the current incarnation of our increasingly childless society cannot last much longer enacting this current paradigm. I will also be looking at this question in much more detail in the second video in this series that's centered on patriarchy and why in fact it is the best expression of a way human societies can manifest for the purposes of its members' health, security, and longevity. But that being said, and returning to the anger and the need for an S-word walk, well, the logic was that people need to protest the idea that precautions should be taken to avoid dangerous situations, and the rejection that absolute freedom of person cannot be guaranteed at all times by the state. that the perfect gynocentric society has yet to destroy the dreaded patriarchy. Well, in the West at least, as you will never see protest movements like this centered around the Middle East, for example. The logic is to protest the idea of the S-word woman. Well, women throughout the Western world, in order to protest the S-word women, dress up in BDSM gear, sex costumes, or hardly anything at all. And the irony of it all seems to be completely lost on the people that participate in these protests. The key here is that no matter the state of undress, both men and other women should not only provide these women with the utmost respect, but that when even flashing most of their body publicly and in a sexual way, that this must be understood to not being done for sexual purposes, nor should it be interpreted as such. Moreover, and in a nutshell, that women have the right to flaunt their sexuality with absolutely no consequences, even more so in the increasingly culturally diverse West, or the catchphrase, still not asking for it. Looking from the outside, it would appear that much of the Western world has reached a kind of cognitive dissonance with the mental gymnastics that we now must perform to allow ourselves, as well as our society, to believe completely contradictory ideas. Take the bikini, for example. I, like most men, are fans of these small pieces of fabric held together with itty-bitty string, but think on this. When a woman wears one, and I'm not even sure the word wear is right when using this, but anyway, when a woman displays her body in one, it pretty much shows off all of her junk. From a psychological point of view, the bikini is at many times tied together with very thin string, which is similar to the miniskirt in that both are seductive and both suggest to the onlooker that what lies underneath is not protected and is easily within reach. Now, think on this. Most women have no problem prancing around in a bikini, and in Europe they have no problem in many places going topless with only a small sliver of fabric covering their lower nether regions. But almost all women would not be comfortable nor would even consider having strangers, whether on Facebook or family friends, see them in their bra and panties, which in most cases are less revealing than your average bikini. And what then does this say about your average woman, minus the growing glut of OnlyFans as well as Instagram girls? Well, what most are saying is that indirectly they are affirming the fact that bikinis are too revealing, as they, for the most part, never wish to be seen publicly in less revealing underwear. And this is where the science comes in. In a study carried out at Princeton University, researcher Susan Fisk was shocked. She was shocked to find that sexy women in bikinis really do inspire some men to see them as objects. Who could have guessed this? Who could have even imagined this? Well, brain scans revealed that when men are shown pictures of scantily clad women, the region of the brain associated with tool use lights up. Men were also more likely to associate images of sexualized women with first-person action verbs, such as I push, I grasp, I handle. Fisk also noted that some of the men studied showed no activity in the part of the brain that usually responds when a person ponders another's intentions. This means that these men see women as sexually inviting, but they are not thinking about their minds. She also continued that the lack of activation in this social cognition area is really odd, because it hardly ever happens. In addition, most of the men best remembered headless photographs of women in bikinis, even though they'd only seen the image for 0.2 of a second. Scientists have seen this absence of activation only once before, and that was in a study where people were shown off-putting photographs of homeless people and drug addicts. So wow, this is incredible. Who could have ever have guessed? As if we needed scientists to tell us, but when a woman shows off her body in a sexual way, she's most likely going to be objectified by men. Wow, this really makes you think. Really makes you think on how men are confused via evolutionary pressures when women objectify themselves. Wow, this is inspirational as it is revolutionary. But another thing to consider is that women are in fact S-words. The chances are they will be very poor choice for life mates, or in old-fashioned parlance, wife material. Why is this, you ask? Well, it's been statistically shown that the more sexual partners a woman has, the greater the chance of her inability to create and maintain a stable marriage. In fact, said chance of domestic instability rises in tandem with the numbers of her previous non-marriage sexual partners. So the moral to that story, that it is indeed hard to make a strong, liberated, independent, sexually promiscuous woman into, well, wife material. But go on, go ahead ladies, go on your walks, dress up like tarts, and then demand that men don't objectify or judge you. Do this throughout your 20s, even into your 30s, but don't be surprised when you hit the wall and flounder around wondering where all the good men are when you finally want to settle down. But not to worry, of course, as new quote data, closed quote, is coming out to save the day from the social sciences and is telling the burgeoning generation of single, childless women that they are actually living the high life, and that there is no better life to be had than living and dying alone, and that this makes these women amongst the most satisfied groups of people out there. It should also be noted I did find a paper saying that the number of sexual partners a person has no bearing on the outcome of their marriage. And I should say that this is regular for social science in academia. Most of these people can't come up with their own ideas and their own work, so they piggyback on the work of others that just confirms what people already know and then give you a gotcha, you're wrong moment. Much like response videos on YouTube and those that make them. But there it is, I thought I would include it, even though it very much runs counter to any commonsensical person. But there is also something else to consider, and this is the demand that society accept a woman's desire to dress like a slag, act like a slag, and live the slag lifestyle, but not be judged or objectified, is clearly and singularly the desire of Western women. You'll not find these walks in Japan, you'll not find them in Bhutan, you will not find them in the Congo or in Egypt. I'm not saying women should ever be harmed, given unwanted attention, nor verbally abused by anyone for anything. But it is clearly Western women and Western women only that think fighting for the right to be a slag is somehow advancing the cause of women. Again, I'm not saying that women should not be free to dress or act in any way they like, be as publicly raunchy as they like. All I'm saying is that we humans are bipedal apes, and attempting to force post-modern ideologies down the throat of society and expecting it to trump evolutionary biology is ludicrous. Given the plummeting birth rates in countries that embrace these kinds of ideals and narratives for their societies, from a purely mathematical standpoint, these societies are self-selecting for extinction. The only thing nature cares about is positive birth rates. As a species or as a culture, you're either going one way or the other. If a culture of people select maladaptive traits that significantly reduce birth rates, that culture will not survive for long. This is something I will be looking at in my follow-up video on the patriarchy and why it has been embraced by virtually all human societies throughout history, and why discarding it will not end up well for the people that do. But in conclusion, and with all of that said, if I were a betting man when looking at millennial women and their abortion-loving, Tinder Chad-chasing, drug-imbibing, body-piercing, vibrant-colored, dyed hair, tattooed-covered ways, I would be putting a significant portion of my portfolio into cat food, cat treats, and cat costume company stocks in the very near future, as I'm certain they will see very, very strong gains in the coming decades. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video,